Hey everyone, thanks for tuning back into the Know Yo Flow Rita podcast. I'm your host Zach, and today I'm joined by two special co-hosts, Clare and Annabel. They're my classmates. Today's going to be a fun one. We'll give you facts about a mysterious ecosystem, and by the end, you should be able to guess what it is. Say hi, guys.
Hi everyone, my name is Clare and I'm a biology student at UCF.
Hello, my name is Annabel and I'm an environmental studies major at UCF. I'm super excited to be here.
So guys, this ecosystem is one we're all familiar with. In fact, it directly impacts 11 million residents here in Florida, which, doing some quick math, is close to half of our population here in the state. It stretches across 100,000 square miles, and it's one of the most productive ecosystems in the world, harboring both human and animal life. You'll often see alligators and birds like the limpkin and double-crested cormorant. It supplies drinking water, creates caves, and is even the cause for sinkholes. However, even though this ecosystem is more expansive up in the north of the state, you may not have seen it, but you've probably swum or paddled in its waters.
This ecosystem has been a vital part of human communities in Florida since Florida was first discovered. Starting with the Native Americans and then the European settlers, this ecosystem was used for trade, transportation, drinking, cooling off, and so much more. Fast forward to the 20th century, water was first withdrawn from this ecosystem in Savannah, Georgia in 1887. By 1912, wells were dug throughout Georgia and most of Florida, with their numbers and depth increasing by the year. These wells were used to satisfy pulp and paper mills, as well as industrial needs as a whole. The wells were also dug for agricultural, municipal, and domestic needs as well.
Absolutely. Historically, this ecosystem has been essential for all facets of our existence. As you said, both in recent history and pre-colonial times, this ecosystem has been vital for Florida residents. However, pollution and overuse has been detrimental to its existence. I mean, considering it spans across the entirety of Florida and portions of Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, and even Mississippi, you'd think overuse would be a term we didn't have to use. But by the late 1900s, people realized this underground giant wasn't limitless.
Very true, Zach. It honestly all started in the early 1970s. Between 1960 and 1970, Florida's population grew by 1.9 million, which impacted Florida's freshwater health significantly. In 1972, the Water Resources Act, the Environmental Land and Water Management Act, the Comprehensive Planning Act, as well as the Land Conservation Act, were all enacted by the Florida legislature. A writer for the Water Matters magazine from the Southwest Florida Water Management District said that these acts were based on the philosophy that land use, growth policy, and water management cannot be separated, a theme that continues to this day.
I'm so glad those legislations were passed because without it, the Curtain Wall project in South Miami-Dade County would not be in existence.
While I know that we have laws in place, I'm honestly not very familiar with current legislation on this ecosystem. I mean, how can you protect something that you can't see? And what impact does it have on the South Miami-Dade Curtain Wall project? And what even is that?
Okay, so the South Miami-Dade Curtain Wall project includes a 4.9-mile range of seepage wall that blocks water migration and prevents saltwater intrusion. This holds back the freshwater, creating a higher hydrostatic pressure, which then pushes the denser saltwater back towards the coast.
That is so interesting, Annabel, and I agree. That plan could not have gone into effect without those legislations. Major conservation first started in 2016 when Florida recognized 30 outstanding Florida springs and did a study to find that 24 of said ecosystems had excess nitrogen levels and needed restoration. Besides the nitrogen, other threats to these areas include more pumping water out than the ecosystem naturally replenishes, saltwater intrusion, recreation, as well as pollution from fertilizer and septic systems. One big move by the Florida legislation was the initiation of basin water management action plans.
It's great that you mentioned BMAPs, as they are very important for reducing nitrogen input in this ecosystem. The plan does a great job at addressing the 24 impaired areas by taking a priority approach towards delineations and project scheduling. Additionally, BMAPs include phased milestones, an estimated nutrient pollutant load, and a completed remediation plan that addresses on-site sewage treatment and disposal systems that ensures septic loading accounts for at least 20% of estimated nutrient input.
There are a lot of challenges that come with protecting and conserving this ecosystem. With sea levels rising, so does the amount of saltwater in this freshwater ecosystem. Higher levels of precipitation means higher levels of possible runoff polluting the ecosystem.
Hate to interject, but there will always be challenges. As you mentioned, saltwater intrusion is a big issue. What's even worse though are humans. In a study conducted by Dr. Mark Bond and Frederick Bell through the University of Florida, our impact on this ecosystem and springs alone have been detrimental. Concerns of nitrogen and other excessive nutrients caused by soil seepage have taken root in Ichuntuckney, Wakula, and Blue Springs. This has led to spring closures, overwhelming presence of invasive species like hydrilla that congest waterways, and ecological declines in sites that contain species of concern, like the Florida manatees.
That's true, Zach. With excess nutrients, invasive species can more readily take over the ecosystem, disrupting the natural processes. Population growth also affects this ecosystem's conservation. While the population growing also means pollution increasing, it also means the demand for water increases. This is the biggest issue. Water is needed for the growing population, and currently, we are taking more than what nature has and what it's replenishing.
As students, I often think about what we can do. Obviously, it's hard to fight climate change and growing populations individually. Collectively, however, it could work. And there's a few ways to go about this. Push for legislation like the Water Resources Act, Environmental Land and Water Management Act that we mentioned before. Get involved with local projects to the South Miami-Dade Curtain Wall Project. Stop our personal use of bottled water and similar products, as well as the companies that produce them.
Very true, Zach. There will always be something for us to do. A big thing is recreating more consciously. A 2012 to 2013 study done by the UF Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences said that $85 million of Florida government money comes from recreational activities connected to Florida Springs. While this money is important for Florida's economy, we also have to think about the ecosystem at hand. Altering foot traffic to create a more sustainable path and establishing boating regulations will probably affect recreation, but it's important to put the ecosystem first to ensure its survival.
So happy you touched up on sea level rise because this plays a major role in both current and future conservation efforts. Currently, water management districts are required by law to prepare water supply plans that will encompass a minimum of 20 years. Models have been developed to assist in meeting RWSPs. The numerical groundwater model is a standard tool that is used to evaluate how climate-induced groundwater adjustments will impact this ecosystem. Florida's water management districts and the U.S. Geological Survey evaluates the potential saline water intrusion rates using the density-dependent solute transport.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said before, human pollution through overuse and harmful discard of dangerous chemicals are prominent topics concerning its conservation. This doesn't just affect the ecosystem health, but it also affects Florida as a whole. According to the Florida Springs Institute, just Silver River and its associated springs alone amass 260,000 visitors per year. Keep in mind, Florida has over 1,000 springs. That is a huge economic factor. We'll cover tourism more in a little bit, but all I'll say is protecting the system means protecting more than 1,000 springs across Florida.
You are so right, Zach. Human pollution through the discard of dangerous chemicals like that from agriculture runoff is a major concern for our environment. In fact, agriculture plays a crucial role in the damage of this ecosystem. In 1975 to 2015, the average withdrawal of groundwater from agricultural use averaged 161.6 million of gallons per day in the 4 counties surrounding the bay. Transitioning to precision irrigation scheduling can reduce water loss and maintain the amount and timing of water application in accordance to the needs of the plants. PIS will reduce agriculture water consumption and improve crop yields.
Besides the huge economic factor, why should we protect this ecosystem? Well, to say the least, it's a biodiversity hotspot. Some of the vegetation you'll see include plants like eelgrass, dwarf sagittaria, spatterdock, bald cypress, spider lily, and duckweed. These plants support high levels of productivity, which permits a wide swath of fauna to live here. Fauna ranges from iconic species like the Florida manatee, American alligator, and river otters to turtles, fish, and wading birds. This ecosystem does a great job of keeping a healthy balance to support its life, but once more, invasive plants, algal blooms, and human impacts increasingly threaten their stability. Alright guys, I think it's time we reveal. You two agree?
Yeah, let's do it.
Drum roll, please.
If you were thinking of the Florida Aquifer system, you'd be right. The Florida Aquifer system extends across approximately 100,000 square miles, covering all of Florida and portions of Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, and Mississippi, like I said before. In Florida, it underlies nearly the entire state, with thicknesses of more than 3,000 feet in South Florida, providing water to 11 million residents, countless visitors, and more than 1,000 artesian springs. This ecosystem is definitely valuable to us humans.
I'd also like to mention that Florida's aquifers and springs not only provide water locally, but also globally through water companies like Nestle, who pay under $200 to gain infinite pumping rights. A Project Paradise film explains this further.
A few years ago, Nestle North America decided that they wanted to expand their bottling operation in Central and North Florida to be able to pump more water and put it into bottles to sell around the country. When they did this, they needed to get a new consumptive use permit. That's a permit that allows you to pull water out of our aquifer and then sell it for whatever use you're going to be, whether it's agriculture to grow food, whether it's domestic supply, so that we have water that comes out of our faucets and showers, or whether you want to pump it out of the ground to put it into a plastic bottle. And the location where they decided to expand was here on the Santa Fe River. And the problem is this river is one of the places in Florida that's already experiencing significant harm, according to our state, because of overpumping.
Definitely. Thank you, Annabel. This aquifer occurs through rainwater, which seeps into the ground. In areas where we have large limestone substrate, the slightly acidic rainwater, over thousands of years, has chemically weathered down the limestone, creating underground pockets for water to collect. This water, in turn, seeps out and forms our spring ecosystem that we see here in the state. The highest density of springs is found in North and Central Florida, where the aquifer is less confined and recharges most readily. The soil is a major factor in this, where sandy soils drain more readily compared to clay soils. Recently, though, as we explained previously, our aquifers are threatened, and thus our springs are too. Human industrial use leaches pollutants and saltwater into the ecosystem, and excessive draining for drinking water, agriculture, and households limit where we can get drinking water. This is especially bad because our aquifer provides water for over a third of Florida residents, as I said before. Overall, this ecosystem impacts us and the life it harbors. Personally, I've grown up visiting Florida springs, oblivious to where they get their water from or how we affect it.
Honestly, that's so real, Zach. I didn't grow up in Florida, but I know of many ecosystems back home that I don't even think twice about, and they may be really struggling as well. But conserving these ecosystems is necessary. Protecting the Florida aquifers and springs is extremely important, not only because it's a natural water source that gives Florida 90% of its drinking water, but also because springs support other ecosystems and unique flora and fauna.
If there's anything you should take from this podcast, it's that the abuse we inflict on our aquifers and springs by depleting their resources and increasing pollution is going to come back to bite us if we don't make changes. Farmers and homeowners need to adopt more sustainable watering practices that will reduce runoff and water waste. We need to hold large corporations like Nestle accountable and transition away from bottled water. Finally, we need to continue to be innovative, recognize our mistakes, and develop new technology that will support the integration of climate modeling for aquifers.
Well, that's all, listener. Thanks for tuning into the Know Yo Flow Rita podcast. We'll see you next week for our next exciting ecosystem. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.